everybody, and welcome to the Sweet Talkin Pony Podcast, podcast for everything My Little Pony. My name is Casey, also known as Charm in the My Little Pony circles. My pronouns are he, him, and she, her. Today I'm joined by Saturn, also known as Buggy, whose pronouns are he, him. This Sweet Talkin Pony Podcast, I want it to be a My Little Pony podcast from the perspective of collectors and general My Little Pony fans who are fans of all generations, because I feel like there were a lot of My Little Pony podcasts that were specifically from the perspective of bronies and G4 and G5 fans, and I know that there were podcasts, earlier podcasts of general My Little Pony fans, but I feel like I don't see any that are like general toy collector podcasts today, you know?
Yeah.
And so we'll discuss My Little Pony toys, its history, maybe a little bit of the shows, although I'll be honest, we're kind of biased towards the toys, I feel like.
I have only seen the movie with Danny DeVito. That's the only non G4 or G3 MLP thing I've seen. I can't comment much on Generation 1. I've only seen that one movie.
Well, that's fair. I also mean, like, very generally, like, we're not going to ignore G4 and G5, but we're like, more general fans, you know? And, like, fandom-related topics, that kind of thing. I also think it'll be fun if, future episodes, we have, like, segments related to recent pony news, like if Hasbro releases some big news, we can talk about that, or like every week we could pick a different toy set to be like, this is the toy set of the week. So this week we're talking about rainbow ponies or whatever the fuck. Yippee! Also, I'll say we'll try to be generally generally PG-13. Like we're allowed to swear. We are adults.
We get one swear word per movie. That's PG-13.
Oh.
One swear word per podcast.
Is it?
I'm pretty sure they're like allowed like one bad word.
No, we're allowed to swear, but we'll keep away from like adult topics. I don't think
probably won't.
Yeah,
happen.
that won't happen on a My Little Pony podcast. I fucking hope. But if it ever does, we'll give like content warnings. I doubt anything like that will happen. So just generally, we won't be talking about like adult topics unless it like. It has to make sense for a My Little Pony podcast, you know? So I'm gonna give myself a very general introduction. I said before, my name is Casey, but online I go by Charm. I run pony blog called Charmsponies, because that's my online name, plus the word ponies. I was a big fan of G4 when I was like 10. Even before G4, I had a couple G3 ponies when I was like 6 or 7. I love those G3 ponies. And then when I was like 8, I was like, oh, I'm so done with ponies. That's a girl's toy, and I'm not into ponies anymore. I'm so grown up and grown past that. And then G4 came out. So I got back into ponies, and then I kind of drifted away from G4 for like a few years, kind of because, like, my family thought it was childish for me to be watching a baby show, and they got really mad and yelled at me about it, so I just stopped watching it, and then I got back into it when I was digging in my closet, and I found, like, my old My Little Pony toys, and I cleaned them up, and then I think, both of us, we were, like, walking into, like, an old toy shop, and they had a G1 pony, Hippity Hop, and I immediately was like, I need that pony. She was $5. And then that kind of sparked an obsession with collecting ponies. Collecting and restoring them.
I go by Buggy on most places, but you can also call me Saturn. I was a G3 kid. Even when G4 came out, I was just like, I never really got into it. I was always just more interested in the show I watched as a little kid. The ponies I had as a little kid. I got rid of them because I was dumb. And that's all. That's the only reason I was stupid.
No.
and thought, I don't need my toys anymore. I was wrong.
And then you realized you needed your toys.
Yeah, I was there when he got hippity hop, and I kind of got interested in it with him, and I started my own collection a little bit after he did. I think the first pony in my collection that I got was a Generation 1 Applejack.
Was that the first G1?
Yeah, I think that's the first one I got in my collection was a G1 Applejack.
So me and Buggy will be like we'll probably be the main co-host just because, you know, we're besties, we're boyfriends, so like
No, we're just besties.
No,
that's it. That's where it ends.
No,
historians
are gonna say, "Oh, they were very, very close." And so we will be the main co-hosts. But I have had some friends express interest, like some pony friends who have been in the pony fandom like longer than I have. So like maybe we'll have future guests on future episodes, but we'll wait and see with that. And so for the topic of this episode, we wanted to dive inside and out of the pony collecting fandom. Going over like a brief history and then really talking about fandom history because that's something that's insanely like interesting to me. My Little Pony began in 1982. It began as a toy called My Pretty Pony, which was created by the illustrator Bonnie Zaccarel, and she is credited as being like the original creator of My Little Pony. She made the original like My Little Pony artworks, and also the sculptor Charles Munchinger, who like worked on sculpting the toys. My Pretty Pony is actually pretty cool. It's like a lot bigger than your standard My Little Ponies. Like, yeah,
it's huge.
Yeah, I have her, and she's like a foot big. I guess.
I guess.
I'm guessing because I do not have a ruler out. I'm kind of tempted to pick one up and measure her, but she has a lever underneath her chin, and the like advertising had it like if you tickle her chin, she will wink her eyes, wiggle her tail, and wiggle her ears. And the mechanics in mine do actually work. There's like mechanics inside the toy that make her wink and make her wiggle her tail and ears, and it's really cute. And she also came with a cowboy hat and a saddle. Mine actually has the original cowboy hat.
There was also two colors. There's the brown one and then the pink one.
Yes, the brown one actually came out first, and then a few years later they came out with the pink one. It was like during year 1 or year 2, but like it was they wanted to like sell some more, and the pink one was actually, interestingly enough, it was packaged with butterscotch.
Mama and baby.
Yeah, it was advertised as Mama and Baby, which is very interesting. So a year after My Pretty Pony, in 1983, came My Little Pony. So like the official My Little Pony. Some people call like My Pretty Pony's Generation 0 because it was kind of like a predecessor to My Little Pony. So My Little Pony started with the original 6 ponies that kind of sparked the original generation. So the original 6 ponies, we've got Bluebell, Blossom, Cotton Candy, Butterscotch, Minty, and I am forgetting one. Snuzzle, yes. And they were all in the same pose. Originally, in the like prototype designs in the original commercial, they all had the same cutie mark, which was a bunch of dots, and it later just became Cotton Candy's cutie mark, and they gave the others like original patterns. But that kind of differentiated it from My Pretty Pony, which My Pretty Pony is a brown horse with some white markings on her nose and her feet, so it's like realistic horse colors.
Yeah, she's like a normal horse.
We have normal horse, and then they're like, hey, you know what little girls really like? Pretty colors. And so they slapped colors on it, and they made 6, and it's like you could collect them all. You can. It was very like it was innovative for like because of course they had like dolls and stuff, but I don't know how many like animal dolls they had. I know there were early animal dolls, like dog dolls and stuff like that, but they were like kind of the first people to do horses with brushable hair. And they would be copied by a lot of companies who make quote-unquote fakies.
I think before that...
Horse dolls have been around for a while, but I think it probably would have been more of, like, a more realistic horse.
There were horse statues before. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but they were like vintage. I cannot remember the name of it. maybe I'll come back to this later in editing.
Yeah, there were probably horse toys before, but there weren't any like as unique as My Little Pony, like in that style and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I feel like they were mostly like realistic horses, and My Little Pony kind of turned them into dolls specifically. Like dolls are known for like being customized. Well, maybe not like intended to be customized, but they're supposed to be unique with like personality, and you dress them up and stuff like that. And speaking of like dressing them up, My Little Pony originally was going to have a lot more emphasis on being able to dress up. Like they came out with stuff called pony wear, which were like little doll clothes that you could dress your pony up with. And originally, like, Hasbro has commented about how they wanted to do more of that and have it be very focused on pony wear, but they eventually kind of stopped making it and just kind of focused on making a variety of pony toys. So the ponies were popular with young girls, but they also have become popular with collectors and doll enthusiasts, kind of just because there is that overlap with like dolls and ponies, and even back then, I say now that they've become popular with collectors, but they've always kind of been popular with collectors because there's like a collectability to them. Hasbro released the ponies in different themed sets. Like, you've got the original 6 collector's ponies, but then you also have rainbow ponies, sea ponies, pony friends, twice as fancy ponies. Like, they made different gimmicks in order to make sets of ponies, and that kind of enhanced a collect them all feature, which encouraged collectors. So My Little Pony Generation 1 lasted from 1982 to around 1992. But it went on to have several different generations. So, like, eventually, Hasbro decides, okay, we want to, like, start over with the brand, kind of do, like, a rebranding, change the art style, change the aesthetic, change the characters, kind of make everything new and fresh for the new generation of kids, if that makes sense.
And everyone hated it.
Everyone did hate it. There's 5 total generations, but Generation 2 was particularly hated at the time just because it was the first time they ever changed My Little Pony, and they got a lot more stylized with like rounded faces and hooves, and they never had a TV show, and people are just like, oh, what is this?
Yeah, people hated change, and the Generation 1 had lasted so long and was so iconic and well known for the people at the time that it changed, and everyone was like, that's not My Little Pony, that sucks. And then it only lasted a little bit and was mostly in Europe because I think Europe hated it less.
Generation 2 began in 1997 and it only lasted 1 year worldwide. It only lasted until 1998. But after that, it only continued in Europe because they were more popular in Europe, like you said, and they continued that until 2003, which might seem a little later. They're like the late 90s, early 2000s toys. And it's also the generation that I feel like people hear the least about it. Like, it's very common for people, especially bronies, to like forget about its existence. And it was widely hated. But honestly, I feel like Gen 2's been making a comeback in like the collectors fandom because people we'll get to this, but people dislike Gen 5 so much that it makes people look back and be like, you know what, this wasn't so bad. But also there's a lot of prominent G2 collectors like Grace Ruby, for example, who is starting a project called G2 Redo, which will be for sale soon as we're recording this. Like, she was posting like images of the prototypes and the herring holes and stuff recently, but well, this is kind of getting tangential, but now that the generations are long over, fans have been making like, they've been working with toy factories to make reproductions of the original toys, but like their own characters or blank bases for customizers to create their own ponies with. If you're a collector, you may have heard of High Quality G1 Customs, or HQ G1C for short. Project G2 Redo is kind of like that, but for G2, and I feel like it's revitalizing a lot of G2 love in the fandom. Generation 3 was a little bit more popular.
Yeah, it was like Generation 1, hit. Generation 2, not a hit. Generation 3, hit again.
Yeah, it started in 2003 to 2009, so that's what you think of when you think of the 2000s ponies. And I think they were more a hit because they kind of went back to like the more horsey art style. Because G2, I love the G2 art style for the record, but it's like very soft, round, stylized shapes, like long, lanky legs and stuff. G3 kind of went. They're not as horse-like as Generation 1. Generation 1 is very horse-like. I think the funniest comparison I ever heard someone say was that G3 is like if you took the G1 ponies and made them anime. Like they're like G1 but a little bit like cutesier. They were tailored more for like the girly 2000s aesthetic. The toys were designed by the same person who designed the reboot of Littlest Pet Shop in the 2000s too. So they kind of share similarities with that, with like the stylized eyes, that sort of thing. And they it again became a lot more popular with collectors, and it's especially popular now because it was released from 2003 to 2009. So all the people who were like toddlers when it was released are now like in their 20s and like growing up.
And we're all really nostalgic for our old toys.
Yeah, everyone's nostalgia posting. So they're like, you know what I love? The old My Little Pony. And the old My Little Pony to them is G3.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm pretty sure Gens 1 and Gen 3, they're very close in popularity. Like when you ask the broader pony fandom, G4 is the most popular. We'll get into it, but with collectors specifically, I feel like Generations 1 and 3 are the most popular with collectors. And if you're more of a fan of the shows than a fan of the toys, then you tend to like Generation 4 and maybe Gen 5, or probably more likely you love to hate on Gen 5. So, I'm gonna wait to talk about Gen 4 just because I have a whole section of because that's where it gets interesting with the fandom history, but, and as My Little Pony came out, it's kind of generated a huge fandom. Like, people have been discussing ponies online for ages, with there being, like, dozens and dozens of old websites created by pony fans, like, discussing their collections or their restorative techniques and My Little Pony stuff in general. And this goes from, like, old personal 90s websites where it's like, hi, this is my blog where I talk about ponies. Like, you can find a lot of old internet pony stuff, which is very fun. Or, like, My Little Pony forums. Like, I feel like one of the biggest ones is My Little Pony Trading Post. That's been around since 1996. So, like, there's been online buzz about pony stuff for a long time. And then G4 came out. So Generation 4 was marked by new toys, a new show, and the show was created by Lauren Faust in 2010. And that show became what I think we can all agree is like the most popular My Little Pony show, and also the most popular My Little Pony fandom, just because it sparked the brony fandom, which for the uninformed, bro plus pony equals brony, like a male My Little Pony fan. It's often defined as like a My Little Pony male fan, but and then they also have Pegasisters, like Pegasus and Sister for girls. But it's like a subsection of the My Little Pony fandom. It's a subsection of the My Little Pony fandom that's focused mainly on the G4 show. And Hasbro was really surprised because the show attracted a lot of like older guy fans, and Hasbro was not expecting that. The target audience was 3-year-old little girls, so they were surprised that it became popular on like 4chan, for example. And I think a lot of the early fandom spark was because, like, people on 4chan were like, oh, there's a new My Little Pony, let's rag on this little girl show, haha, and then they actually watched it and, like...
Yeah, they actually watched it and were like, wait, it's really good. Oh no.
Generation 2 did not have a show. Generation 1 was, you know, like a 90s toy ad. It's like a little, like, kind of cheap animation made solely to sell the toys. Generation 3 is more like a kid's cartoon, like, specifically, I think it's targeted at, like, really young kids, but it's, like, pink and girly, and it's like, oh, Pinkie Pie, I'm so excited for your birthday today. Like, it's very, like, kiddie stuff. And Generation 4 was created by Lauren Faust, who has a history in, like, working in animation and stuff. It's 2010 when she made the show, and I think the pitch for it was in, like, 2008 or something, but, the times were changing, and with those kind of cartoon shows, they tried to. I feel like in the 2010s we had like a renaissance of animation where like all the kid shows try to be like a little more engaging, and I think Lauren Faust legit was just trying to make an engaging, like, adventurous TV show for little kids, but like something that was like actually fun to watch, and that's what made it so successful. And it's interesting how big the G4/Brony subsection of the fandom has become, because it's to the point where most average internet users, when they think of My Little Pony, they just think of G4 or bronies. Like, and I feel like most My Little Pony fans are bronies. Like, the fandom overall encompasses several different types of people. You've got the collectors, you've got the all-generation fans, you got bronies, and those are all like subsections, but it's like most My Little Pony fans are the G4 brony section, because that's how they're just such a big fandom. And also, a lot of bronies don't really have that much knowledge or enjoyment of the generations prior to Generation 4. Like, they kind of hopped on the bandwagon when Generation 4 came out and didn't look at any of the older stuff, which I understand. Like, when I was a little kid, I was like, I don't care about this old shit. But... And there's also, like, a kind of, like, a lot of, like, misinformation. Not, like, deliberate misinformation, but, like, I feel like a lot of bronies don't understand the distinction between Generation 1 and 2. Like, a lot of times they'll be like, oh, My Little Ponytails is the Generation 2 TV show, which isn't true. It's Generation 1. There are Generation 1 toys.
It's just, like, a later
show from a different place.
Yeah, they kind of Core 7 era Generation 1, but not that at all. It's kind of also a very different culture compared to, like, general pony fandom or, like, collectors. I feel like Generation 4 is, like, a lot of, like, standard internet user. They post, like, standard internet memes. They might be, like, a bit more adult in, like, they might be, like, old, like, a bit more adult in, like, their humor or stuff like that. Like, they care more about the TV shows than the toys, and there's, like, a more focus on, like, the narrative and the characters, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas pony collectors, a lot of pony collectors are older, because, something that's really fun being in the collectors fandom is you meet all sorts of different people. A lot of, like, people are young, but there's also a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm 50, and I love My Little Pony when it came out. Like, I've met so many, like, grandmothers and stuff on these forums who are, like, older, but they still love My Little Pony because, like, they loved Generation 1 when they were younger, and that's always nice to see.
Yeah.
But it also, because the older generations were kind of, some of them were, like, geared towards little kids. Some of the older generations were just cheap 90s toy ads. They might not have as much depth in the TV shows. The like, collector general part of the fandom, I feel like they're more, like, more polite? Is that the right word? I don't know. Like, they tend to be like, oh, I here's my pony, I cleaned her up and restored her. Do you guys like her? Like, that, I feel like that's the people tend to be, like, kind of politely sharing their pony stuff, their pony pictures, that kind of stuff. And not to paint bronies in a bad brushstroke or anything. Like, some bronies are epic and cool and, like, generally it's such a big fandom that you can find every type of person on it. Like, that's kind of, like, the internet as a whole, but, like, it is such a big fandom that you've got, like, the more adult people who make edgy humor, you've got, like, the normal, like, internet users, you've got kids, you've got all sorts of people. Some people can be really extremely rude and toxic, or some people can be polite, but I feel like the collectors fandom is like significantly smaller, so you get less of those bad apples. Some like general pony collectors do consider themselves to be bronies. Like just because you like all generations doesn't mean you're not a brony, but like also, just because you like Generation 4 doesn't mean you are a brony. Like, some people, it's like a label that some people like the label and some people don't like the label because they feel like they don't connect to that kind of culture. And some people consider themselves both. Like, some people are like, oh, I'm a brony, or I'm a pony collector, but some people will be like, yeah, I'm both. Or like, I've met many different collectors who feel different ways about it, you know? Like, some people feel like they don't fit in with that part of the fandom.
Yeah. I like the G4 show a lot, but I don't think I ever got into it enough to really consider myself a brony, and I've never like participated in the brony space as much, even though I do really enjoy the show.
So you don't consider yourself a brony?
Yeah, I like G4 a lot, but I don't think I'm a brony.
What are your thoughts on like the overlap or the differences of these two different like kind of parts of the fandom?
I think there's definitely some bronies who like really enjoy the toys like the collectors do. I think collectors can enjoy the shows, but it is just because the older generation media was so different. It's definitely a lot more about the toy than it is the show. And since G4 was like just a normal show that most bronies, it tends to be the show and the characters and that sort of thing they like more than the toys.
That is something I've noticed. I think it's just because I feel like you and we hang out around more of the internet spaces that focus on collecting. There are, of course, like G1 fans who love the G1 show, or G3 fans who only watch the show and don't collect.
Yeah.
Like, it's not hard rules, but that's just a trend I notice. Like, if you're a fan of the older I think it's also because the older generation toys tended to be higher quality.
I feel like the G4 toys for most people felt a lot more like, okay, these are definitely for babies, just because there wasn't as much care put in. Not to say that none of the adults like them. There absolutely a lot of them do. I even like some of the toys. I love the G4 toys I have, but it just, the toys felt more, I think, to a lot of the adult fans of, okay, yeah, those are for the actual intended audience, which is little girls. And I feel like a lot of bronies ended up making their own merchandise, like all those custom plushies and stuff.
Yeah, and those can be really, really high quality too, just because the care is there. I feel like with the G4 toys, they started like the earlier stuff is a little better in my opinion because they were like trying more.
I have one of the earliest Celestia toys. I have the talking Celestia, and she's really nice. She's really high quality. She has a really surprising amount of phrases, like way more than I would have expected. Her hair's nice. She's really pretty. She's got glitter, and I feel like the first couple of years they were like really trying hard to make nice toys, and then they kind of realized that, oh, people will just buy it. We don't really have to focus on quality as much anymore. And then the quality started going down, and you started having every pony has the same mold. They started using really low quality hair and just started showing less care for the toys, which is really sad.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the reasons why a lot of collectors don't like the G4 toys, because if you look at the original 3 generations, there's a lot of like variety in the different types of poses and stuff, but I feel like all the G4s kind of have like the same model, and they're not even like posing. They're just kind of standing there, kind of like a collector's pose, just standing there facing forward.
Yeah.
And like you said, I feel like the quality of the plastic itself like went down Like, the earlier ones, they did put some effort in, but then they started using more polypropylene hair, which disintegrates over time. But the G4 stuff seems especially low. G3 also used polypropylene hair in some of their ponies to cut production costs. And that kind of showed up like 20 years later. Now the hair's kind of low quality and can disintegrate if you brush it too hard. But I feel like G4 is already doing that, and G4 is like half the age of G3. It's like way younger than...
Yeah, G4 came out like 2009, 2010.
I have a Fluttershy from 2017 whose hair just ripped out of her skull. And this was like... Yes. Last year, so it was in 2023. That's 6 years, and then the hair just disintegrates. Like, something happened with the quality. And then Generation 5, which, Generation 5 kind of suffers from the same Generation 2 problem.
Generation 4 was so big and iconic, and that's a really big... Those are really big shoes to fill. Really big horseshoes to fill. And it's just... The toys have gotten better, but just it wasn't even as big a change as G2, but it's just G4 was just G4, and there was just no coming after that. It was kind of doomed from the start, I feel, unfortunately.
Yeah, especially since a lot of bronies don't have that prior G4 knowledge, and so they feel like G4 is My Little Pony, and so like If you know about the previous generations, you know that like each generation is gonna change some things, but I feel like they didn't like the change, but also the changes were kind of odd.
It didn't change enough. I feel like they knew that it was gonna be hard to like be successful after G4, so I felt like they were still kind of holding on to G4 in a way. It's in the same universe and that sort of thing, when all the other ones were like very different of this is this generation, this is that, and this felt like trying to continue G4 because it felt kind of like they were scared to let go of it completely because it's like, oh, well, what if people don't like it? But also they didn't really want the fandom to like it still because they were like, it's for the little girls, and that's that. So it's just complicated, and I think kind of no matter what Generation 5 did, it was kind of gonna fail just the same way G2 did, of just, it came after a really big, iconic, defining generation.
I also feel like Generation 5, they also kind of, Hasbro was still in the mindset of, oh, we're too big to fail. They'll buy, it's My Little Pony, so it'll be successful. So they didn't, like, try as much with the story and that kind of stuff, like, and they didn't try as much to make the toy, like, granted, some of the G5's toys...
Yeah, they're still suffering from the variety issue of... A lot of the older generations didn't really have as much of, like, the whole main group of ponies, and this is the only people we really make toys of. They kind of still are doing the thing of, there's a main set of ponies, and those are the only ones that they really make toys of, which did start with later Generation 3 into 3.5. And I know for, a lot of the toy collectors who are, interested in the new generations and giving them chances, that's a big downside of it's just, there's no variety, it's a lot less fun to collect, there's a lot less to collect, but they do all have different face molds, the hair is nicer quality again. I don't know if it's as nice as it used to be, but from what I've heard, it's nicer quality hair again, but it's still just... They're not really doing any fun poses. They're still standing there.
I have a couple of them. I don't know what material their hair is. I don't know if it is polypropylene, but it does feel nicer than some of the later G4s.
The toys are kind of getting back up there, but it's still not great with the toys.
I also feel like something that kind of hurt G5 is... Well, the animated show, the, like, 3D animated show can look nice at times, but a lot of people don't like the faces of the ponies because the snouts are so small.
I think it's just I'm someone who like really struggles to get used to seeing the 3D. I do think it can be cute. It's just certain ponies, they tend to be pink ones. When they look kind of dead on, they look really uncanny valley, because I feel like the short snouts that G4 really popularized, the really short ones, just don't really look, they don't like translate as well into 3D. And it doesn't pair well with the eyebrows when they don't translate well, because then they look like a human face. I think it's Pip specifically who kind of makes me uncomfortable to look at when she's like looking dead on.
And also, I feel like a lot of people don't like the 2D drawn, the art style that they switch to in the middle of it for the YouTube series,
Yeah.
the like make your mark, not make your mark, tell your tale, right?
That one, it's kind of just like really basic children's show animation, which I know a lot of people just are not fond of. Because, like, G4 was basic Flash animation, but, like, it had a unique style, it had a vibe. And then that one, it's kind of the whole thing of children's shows are all kind of looking the same, and it's not, like, a really fun, like, unique style. There's not much to it.
Yeah, I feel like the
When
style is
the-
kind of icky sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, the character designs are kind of wrong looking.
Yeah, it's not a good art style for the ponies.
I feel like the 3D one, it took a lot of getting used to, but it is nice to look at, and they do, for like their coloring pages and stuff, have a really, really lovely 2D style that they could have used, and it would have been adorable. But we have the weird, basic, low effort children's show style instead. It's kind of like what adult animation suffers from, of just make it animated, who cares if it looks good.
It's also kind of odd that, like, I feel like that show, isn't it all, like, YouTube shorts?
I'm pretty sure it's all on YouTube, yeah. I haven't seen it on any streaming services or anything.
Which kind of highlights, like, the changing of the times. They're like, oh, they want to appeal to little kids, and little kids just sit on YouTube all day. iPad baby.
Yeah, because Generation 5 is definitely for Gen Alpha, and Gen Alpha will have better access to it on YouTube rather than Netflix.
Yeah, and I think Hasbro
Which is
specifically made it that way because they didn't want the Brony fandom continuing along, because there were some very toxic parts of the G4 fandom, and they didn't want...
Yeah.
Just as a kid who was sort of in the fandom without ever watching the show, the adult fans kind of forgot that children exist, and they didn't like keep in mind of you're an adult in a children's space. You have to kind of keep all of your adult stuff in a different section, and they just post it, and we're like, whatever. I adore the My Little Pony creepypastas. I shouldn't have seen them when I did. I was too young. I should not have seen them that young. And like there were adults who were like making fan art with like violence in it, and it's just stuff that shouldn't have been like in certain parts of the Brony fandom. Because like, yes, you are an adult, you do deserve to share your more adult oriented content. Like, you're not banned from doing that. That's not cool. You deserve to share things. But it's also, and this happens in a lot, it's a lot of adults in fandoms that also are like shows for children. They kind of forget that, yes, it's not your responsibility to like totally restrict all your content and never post anything you want to, but you do have a responsibility as an adult in a fandom with children to kind of keep the kids safe. And like, you have to do the bare minimum of keep your things kind of in the right spot. And I feel like no one kind of did that. It was like really not great to be a kid enjoying My Little Pony. So I do get why Hasbro didn't want that to keep happening, but I think it also kind of hurt it in the end and wasn't good for the show.
There's a lot of like a lot of people not keeping it out of kids' faces. Like, they would just post it without putting any kind of filters or anything like on it. And a lot of kids were exposed to like violence, they were exposed to NSFW content, like all the stuff that kids should not be seeing.
Yeah, that's not unique to the pony fandom either. You know, I'm a furry, it happens in the furry community too, unfortunately. It happens pretty much in any space that also has children in it, which is not fun.
The G4 and G5 fandom is very interesting to look at when in comparison to like the other subsections of the fandom. And it does kind of have its own culture. A lot of like brony culture was built off of like memes or like fan content, fan animations, fan stories, that kind of stuff. Like and a lot of it was more adult oriented content, like creepypasta stuff, like that would have huge fandoms, but there were also like
there were some really cool things too.
Like fan songs, like there were fan songs. I know a lot about Princess Luna, but like and fan art and like fan fiction, there was a lot of cool stuff, a lot of cool like bronies, a lot of cool bronies creating cool stuff. And there have also been a lot, just in My Little Pony in general, there have been a lot of fan meetups and conventions, both collector-centric ones, like the My Little Pony Fair has happened since 2004, so like there were fan meetups before bronies, but there are a lot of both positive and not so positive brony conventions. Like people joke about Lost Pegasus being a disaster, but there have been some positive brony conventions.
Every community kind of has a
fail convention. There's been some failed furry conventions that are bad.
But I think that also kind of highlights like the community of the brony fandom. Like there were some positive conventions, and it just kind of shows people coming together to celebrate something that they love.
Yeah, it was both nice and also not nice if you were a child. Like if and I was kind of an older kid, but I was in middle school. We both were, but it was kind of still like looking back on it, it's like it probably isn't as bad as it was for like the actual target audience of the show that was trying to enjoy it, but it's still like, yeah, I thought Rainbow Factory was really cool and awesome, but I shouldn't have read it.
Yeah, you read it?
I think I might have read it.
You read it? I never knew the specific story, but I knew what it was through like brony osmosis, hearing people talk about it. I knew what it was, and I knew what Cupcakes generally was, but I never read or watched any of the actual stories.
I think the only like creepypasta I genuinely engaged with was Rainbow Factory.
I think that one was one that I really got into. And then Cupcakes, I didn't care much for. I knew what it was. I never felt curious enough to go look it up. I never really got into any of the others, which is good.
But like looking at G4 and more generally pony stuff in general, there were like a lot of different reasons why people might have been pony fans. Like enjoying the TV show was the primary reason why a lot of G4 fans.
Yeah, that was the big one.
Yeah, they might have liked the community with they might have like seen memes online about the characters and connected with that. A lot of pony fans. Now speaking more generally, aside from G4, a lot of people have nostalgia from when they were a kid, or they just think that the toys or the ponies are cute. You know. Yeah,
though I think even like without nostalgia, it's just like Generation 4 is just appealing. Like there are people in my life who used to be like real mean to me about watching My Little Pony, and now they're telling me like, yeah, we started watching My Little Pony. It's really good.
Well, they tell good stories.
Yeah, it's just a really appealing generation. The designs are nice to look at. The show is fun and like really engaging to watch. It's just, I think by far probably the most appealing generation, even though it's not my favorite and I prefer the other ones. It's just broadly the most appealing.
And that leads us to, I think we can all like notice that there is a lot of judgment that a lot of people have against My Little Pony fans. Like, people, like, kind of judge people, like, oh, you're into My Little Ponies. Just because a lot of people outside the fandom don't understand why people would like something that's targeted at very young girls, you know? So have there been any, like, major times that, like, you remember feeling, like, maybe, like, guilty or lesser, or, like, maybe, like, embarrassed just because of people are like, oh, you like My Little Pony? Like, has anyone ever been weird about it?
None of my like peers when I was a kid were weird about it because I was friends with kids who liked it. But my family, they weren't like overly mean, but it was definitely like, are you watching My Little Pony? And that's why even today I've never made it past like season 2 of Generation 4. Yeah, I've like never made it past. My family now though, they're a lot less. They don't care as much. My family cares more about the Furbies than they care about the ponies.
They've kind of, like, accepted that you like ponies because you have a big-ass collection of them.
My mom jokes that I'm stealing toys from children, but she doesn't actually care. No one's mean to me about it. People get me ponies. But there are, like, definitely other people out there. Like, I play a lot of video games. I don't mention it a lot when I play video games because just those kinds of people tend to be more like aggressive about liking anything. But I feel like a lot of people in real life, kind accepting people, don't really care. Yeah, because, you know, I'm weird. My family knows I'm weird. They don't really care anymore. So I don't really experience it much anymore. But when I was like in middle school trying to get into it, they definitely were really judgmental about it, and I just stopped watching the show.
I also never finished G4 because I made it really far. I made it to like season 6 or something, and I remember vaguely the episode I was on, but my mom walked in the room and she was mad about something. She gets mad, she yells and kind of does stuff that she shouldn't, but she saw me watching it and she's like, why the fuck are you watching a baby show? Like, I'm not, like, she was in a mad mood and it just made me turn it off, and I just never had the heart to pick it up again. I feel like the general public, they might have judgments with thinking that, like, you're too grown up to enjoy toys or ponies or children's shows. And that judgment might also come from, like, family or friends. Like, people think, oh, when you're grown up, you shouldn't have quote-unquote childish interests. They think, like, oh, if you're grown up, like, I've seen many people, like, you see this sometimes in pony spaces where people are like, oh, I wish I still had my childhood ponies, but my parents pressured me to sell or donate them because...
I said it was because I was dumb, but it was when I was a kid I had a lot of toys, and I was kind of in a family of if you don't play with your toys, you gotta get rid of them, and I hadn't played with them, so I got rid of them all, and I ended up really regretting it. And I think once you like get into toys, I've kind of seen that a lot of like older adults, most of them don't really care anymore, because I've seen a lot of like when I get Furbies and stuff, the people who sell them, I get most of them from like auctions, and there's like a bunch at a time, and the people who sell them are like, yeah, I get a lot of comments from people who are like, I had these as a kid, and it makes me really happy seeing them again now. So I feel like most older adults who have kind of grown out of thinking they're too old or good for something are kind of reconnecting with like the joy that toys bring even as an adult, and kind of aren't being as nasty about it anymore because like they get it. Because like the Furbies, the original Furbies came out in 1997, so there's a lot of like older people that are like at least like late 20s, like at the youngest, who are like seeing these things and are like, hey, I had that, and seeing just this silly little guy they used to have, just it brings a smile to their face. So I feel like it's a lot more of like maybe like younger people who just might not get it yet, or just people who never like, I don't know, maybe they just haven't seen the right toy yet to like kind of bring back that childlike wonder. But I feel like a lot of people just don't really care that much. Just in my experience, I feel like it's definitely the minority of people who really care and get on people about it.
it sucks when you're pressured into giving shit away, but it's not necessarily bad to give away old toys. Like sometimes it is sad because like when I was a kid, I had a collection of these 2003 Care Bears that were literally given to me when I was born, and we had like a dozen of them, but we were really poor, and we had to move into a smaller house, so we didn't have space for all that, and that's why I was kind of made to give my toys away. And I remember the Goodwill person who was taking the donations kind of chastised. I was 6, and they kind of chastised us, like, "Oh, you're getting your toys taken away. You probably did something bad." But no, we were just poor. that was tangential. But there is value in like giving stuff away to a new home or like new kids. But like it does kind of suck when you're pressured into it because people are like, "Oh, you have to grow up. You have to seem grown up."
Sometimes giving toys a new home is a really nice, lovely thing, and other times it's not, because like I don't want to give them a new home. Their home's here. I like them. Like if I could have, I probably wouldn't have gotten rid of my My Little Ponies, My Littlest Pet Shops, because it wasn't that long till I kind of regretted it.
And I also think that a lot of people might, like, look down on collecting in general. Like, my mom says that it's hoarding. She thinks that I'm hoarding My Little Ponies, or I'm hoarding all my video games.
When there's a difference between collecting and hoarding.
Yeah, and sometimes collecting can cross a line into being a problem. Like, if it's interfering with your financial well-being, or if it's, like, infringing your life in a negative way, then it can be kind of an issue.
It's also a different attitude of, it's kind of things that people see as like luxury or worthless, like having a DVD collection or a video game collection or a toy collection, instead of, say you have a stamp collection or a coin collection or you collect rocks. People aren't going to be as nasty about that, because like that's what they think of when they think of a collection. They think of someone going out and like collecting coins and putting them in their little book, collecting stamps and putting them in their little book, having a line of rocks. And so when they see like these things that they think are like material things rather than just some little hobby, a lot of people will like see your DVDs and think, "Oh, that's material stuff," and your video games, that's material stuff, when it's just, no, I just like them.
I feel like there's also like this aspect of minimalism where people are like, "Oh, if you don't need it, then you should get it out of your life." But sometimes owning stuff is fun. If it makes you happy, then what's the issue? If it makes you happy and it's not infringing on your life in a negative way, there's not really an issue.
Yeah, the need for minimalism and this idea of you have to get rid of everything that you don't use every single day, it's that also has an effect on it. But yeah, it's definitely, there's like types of collecting people view as respectable and aren't going to be like, "Oh, you're hoarding, oh, you shouldn't do that." And then for other things that people like think are silly or like are typically seen as like material goods, people are like, "Oh, you shouldn't collect that. What are you doing, you goober?" When it's the same as collecting coins or stamps, it's just a different thing.
Collecting isn't a negative thing, because like most of the time it's just getting a cool collection of something that makes you happy. But also there are many people in the collecting fandom who want to preserve toy history, so they'll like collect boxed items and preserve them, take good photos of them to preserve them on the internet. Or like, I like to restore my toys, so I'll get a pony that has damage. She has like cut hair or like damaged limbs. You can fix that and kind of restore a piece of toy history.
But yeah, I feel like people's attitudes about collecting like children's toys, and like in real life, people tend to be more chill about it, because you kind of tend to surround yourself with people who are a lot like you and are going to be like, "Yeah, that's a cool thing," and aren't going to be jerks about it. But then like online, you can see a lot more negativity, because you just have access to a lot more people, and there's going to be a lot more different people, and people who don't get it and think it's weird and like, "Why do you like this weirdo childish thing?" So I feel like it kind of differs in like where it's coming from. Of like IRL, it's probably, people probably aren't going to care much, but like online, you're probably going to face a lot more negativity of, "Oh, you shouldn't be collecting that. Why are you doing that?"
And I think a lot of general pony hate comes from cringe culture. Like,
Yes,
especially
absolutely.
online. Like, people tend to bully people for liking technically harmless things. It was like a big trend for a while for people. And now people say, like, cringe is dead, but it still kind of exists. Like, people would make fun of people for look down on you for being childish or for being awkward or weird or liking weird things. And there's
They look down on you for having autism. That's what it is.
Yeah, a lot of cringe culture targets like symptoms of autistic or sometimes like with hyperfixations with ADHD too. But there's also a specific type of cringe culture that bullies bronies specifically, since they were so prominent online in the 2010s, and that was like the height of making fun of cringe people. Like,
Yeah.
Like, on the internet, people are like, oh, you like ponies? Oh, you're a brony. You're a man who loves girly toys. Like, that was kind of a thing. And in recent years, people have discussed, like, oh, cringe culture's dead. And there's been a sentiment that people are, like, less judgmental. And you see it a lot. Like, people are kind of embracing their cringe, embracing their inner child, shamelessly liking whatever they want to like, but you still can find people being kind of hateful about quote-unquote cringy things online. So, the next thing I want to talk about is, like, the values with pony collecting. And I know there is a monetary value if you want to save ponies for the future to sell them, because they can become expensive over time, but that's not what I want to focus on. That is a reason why someone might collect ponies, because, like, a lot of older ponies can be worth, like, thousands of dollars, but ultimately, I think the main value in collecting ponies is, My Little Pony is all about fun and joy. People are in the My Little Pony fandom because they like whimsical ponies, or the toys, or they think they're cute, or they like the show. And if it isn't harming anyone and isn't detrimental to their, like, finances or living situation, there isn't really an issue with someone loving ponies, having a large collection, making fan art, making pony sonas. Like, we should encourage people to pursue the things that make them happy. And there is a lot of creativity and enthusiasm from people within the My Little Pony community. Like, people make art, they discuss the toys in the shows, they make friends, they support each other, and they give advice to, like, help each other out with their toys. You know, there's a lot of, like, positive aspects to the community. And it's not a perfect fandom, like, no fandom is perfect, there are bad apples.
No,
we talked extensively.
There's bad people in everyone, yeah.
But there is a very cool and supportive community still there, if you know where to find the right people, if you know how to connect with people online. And I also think that it's just cool that a lot of pony doll collectors are preserving history by restoring these toys back to their former glory, and people have thoroughly documented their collections, and there's, like, lots of information online about My Little Pony and its history. Not perfect, there's still some stuff we're missing out on, but it's cool that people are putting in the work to preserve some things that, like, maybe people are like, oh, we don't need to preserve these little girl toys, but it is cool that they have. So I think, all in all, My Little Pony has had a very long and interesting history to it. Both the development of the toys, but also the fandom that's developed, and it's expansive, and there's a lot of interesting facets to it. And people can be... There is some, like, negativity both in the fandom and about the fandom with, like, people looking down on it, but there is still value in the fandom and a lot of positives that can come from My Little Pony. I think we can just come to a close with that, with the end of our discussion, and we can... I want to thank everyone for listening to this first episode of this Sweet Talkin Ponies podcast. Hopefully it was interesting and entertaining. I do think that, like, fandom history is a very interesting topic. And you can join us next time for more exciting pony discussions. Yippee! Yeah, I hope that we can talk more about, like, different toys, maybe restoration topics, maybe more fandom history, maybe stuff from the shows? I don't know. I'm not the best person to ask about that, but it can still be fun. So like if you have any ideas for topics that you want to hear us discuss, let us know down below. And I want to thank you very much for listening today.